Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Brayden Ware from Holler Commerce. Holler Commerce is the e-commerce platform that sprang out of the GoWild e-commerce and community engagement platform. GoWild is a retailer, but they started out as purely a community for the outdoors people in primarily in the United States, so hunters, fishers, etc. And so what they did is they built out their own e-commerce platform on top of their engaged community systems. And then what they've done is they have now commercialized this, turned it into a product, and are now releasing this e-commerce platform for other retailers to use and build on top of their community of engaged fans. Enjoy. This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is going to be a super interesting one today. This one's going to be slightly different to the norm, and how we got to be here and how we started talking is going to be an interesting story. But I'm really super excited to welcome Brayden Ware to the podcast. Welcome, Brayden.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Happy to be here. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. You're based in Indiana. We were talking about off air just before we started.
Yeah, I'm based in Indiana. GoWild and Holler is based in Louisville, Kentucky, but I'm just across the river. So, yeah, half the team is in Indiana, half the team's in Kentucky, and then we actually have a few remote folks too, but the in-office folks are around that Louisville area.
Yeah, and look, I was talking about Indy, and like I got a friend of mine who lived in Indiana for about 10 years, and he absolutely loved it. He was about 5 minutes away from the, I guess it's called the Brickyard, right? Where they run, is it called the Brickyard there, where they run the Indy 500 there?
Yeah. There's the Brickyard 500, I think, and then or 5,000 maybe. I don't know. I went when I was like a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't keep up very much now, but it was cool back then for sure.
Midwest is crazy, man. Hunting and fishing and NASCAR and rodeos.
Yeah.
And just it's pretty. We'll talk about how that has influenced the business and what you guys are doing. But Midwest is a cool place. I'm originally from the States and lived in New Zealand for a long time, now down in Mexico. But nobody gets into hunting quite like Americans.
Yeah. No, Indiana's a unique state too, because you've got in the southern part, you've got like a southern hospitality type culture. You'd feel like you were in Tennessee or Alabama or Georgia, and then you go 2 hours north to Indianapolis and it's like you're hanging out with almost like New Yorkers. Like it's the Northeast mindset, and it carries that way all the way up. But I went to school in Southeast Tennessee, and I had people asking me if I was from Alabama because of my accent, and I was like, no, I'm from Southern Indiana.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah, my friend would just love living there, and definitely the community spirit, the idea of community spirit is very strong in the whole of the Midwest and in the whole of the South for that matter. Community is a real big deal. And I guess how I originally first started to hear about you guys and GoWild was following you guys, following your founder, even though I'm not massive in hunting, I follow Joe Rogan quite heavily, and Cam Haines and Goggins and all those guys, and they're seriously into their hunting, especially bow hunting. And look, it's a very cool community. But what really has always intrigued me about the GoWild story, I guess, is how the entire business sprang out of community to begin with. And so maybe you can tell me, before we get into Holler and how that came about, maybe we start with a bit of the origin story of GoWild, because to me, that feels like the more important story even than the Holler story. And even though I'm not necessarily into hunting myself in a big way, your outdoor community, the broader when I was in New Zealand, did lots of outdoor tramping and climbing and all sorts of things in the outdoors. And so just being in the outdoors in general, that captures a much broader swathe, I think, of any given community than just the hunting community. And you guys seem to have really tapped into the zeitgeist of the outdoors people, for lack of a better term. And I don't even fully understand the GoWild business model. Now, I don't know whether you guys actually hold stock or not, or whether your platform and your community is really just a large affiliate network for some of these brands that want to sell products through your platform. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how GoWild came to be, both as a community and a commerce platform. And maybe that's a great place to start.
That's a great place to start, because it ultimately ties into where Holler came from too. So it'll all come full circle. Yeah. So GoWild came out of Brad Luttrell as our founder, CEO. We have 4 founders, but it was his original concept, where he's from Southeast Kentucky, grew up like fishing and riding 4-wheelers and that kind of outdoor thing, but never really got too much into hunting. And then later in life, started getting more and more into deer hunting and started wanting to get like more serious about it and get better at it. And just looking around, realized that, man, there's not a fantastic place to go and ask rookie questions and like tap into other people that have experience doing this in a productive way, in a nice environment that you're used to, like with the new digital age, with all the apps and mobile responsive stuff. Like a lot of these before us, a lot of this type of interaction was going down on these like old world forums that look crazy. They look out of like the 90s or something. It's pretty wild. And some are still active today, which is funny, but that's where Brad was like, man, there's a gap in the space of like where I want to be in a community with other people that are similar to where I'm at, but also have been there, done that, and be like digital mentors and digital peers pursuing this activity. And Facebook seems like the answer to that. But you get into these hunting and outdoor Facebook groups, a lot of them don't really love seeing the same questions from new folks over and over again, right? They're sometimes hostile. Like a very common hunting question when you're new is, what are the best hunting boots to use? Because there's a zillion options, a zillion price points, a zillion brands. Like you don't know who to trust and who's done this or that. And so you ask that question in a hunting Facebook group today, you're going to get blasted. Everyone's like, use the search bar, find somebody else that asked that question, get out of here, rookie kind of approach. So they forgot that they were that person not that long ago. And so really, that's what GoWild was born out of. Just we need a place for people that are getting into hunting or have been there for a long time to interface with each other and share experiences of hunting and the outdoors together. And so that's what GoWild was at the beginning. It was just a community and built on an advertising model for monetization. We're going to build up this big group of folks, eyeballs, and build some ad tech into the platform. Started off with an iOS app. We're now web platform app, iOS app, and Android. Just expand the community, get more eyeballs, sell more brand partnerships, show display ads, do email, do all this traditional media kit type stuff that anytime someone finds themselves with a big community, you start looking to monetize and stuff. So that was the vision and rolled that way for a while. And really the catalyst for what eventually became our e-com business was a lot of people in the community talked about gear. Like that is a gigantic part of the outdoor experience, no matter what your pursuit is. Even if you're just hiking, people that don't hike all the time, like probably don't realize how much thought goes into what backpack to use and what bladder to put in the backpack and what socks and footwear combo, it's crazy. And so people we noticed were like posting screenshots of product pages and grabbing links from all these different websites, and it just looked bad. Like the UI was it was really not good and not really the intended design. Like you never know, or sometimes people do, but a lot of times you don't know where these communities are going to go and what they're going to talk about and all this stuff. It was like, okay, we're going to introduce this feature called Gearbox, where we're going to go around and we're going to integrate with all these different affiliate companies, and if Bass Pro sells it, we're going to have it. If Amazon has it, we're going to have it. And we're going to build this system that aggregates all that data and then populate all these product pages so that as a hunter, I can go on and I can search and I can find the bow that I use. I can find the broadhead I use, the arrow, the boots, the jacket, the hat, literally the whole setup is what we call them, setups. And you can put that on your profile. And whenever you make a post, hey, I shot this buck, you can tag the gear that you use in that pursuit. And then the idea is people can click on that product from the feed or the forum, we call the trail mix, and go to a product page. And then they can click out and go buy it through the affiliate link situation. And that's where it all started. And where it has evolved from there has been, we now warehouse and inventory our own stuff. We have drop ship setups, and we actually do EDI now. So we're tapped into distributors, and we do the large majority of our sales and e-com through non-warehouse stuff. We try to reserve our small warehouse for like high sell-through and high margin products and things like that. You can actually, the other listeners can't see this, but behind me in the room I'm in, this is one of the rooms we keep returns in. So we have a small office. But yeah, so that was really like, that's the social commerce concept, is you have a place like a community where people can come and share their experiences and connect that to gear, and then we sell that gear. And so that's been a long, crazy, manual, difficult process to get to where it sounds simple, but the tech under the hood is very impressive. And our nerds, as I affectionately call them, have built some amazing systems and have done some really cool things. And that leads into Holler, but I'll leave us there.
Wow, what an incredible story. And look, as someone who's been working in e-commerce for over 20 years, just the fact that you've got multimodal e-commerce, because effectively you've got a combination of kind of almost an affiliate business, a marketplace, a direct commerce business, an EDI integrated business with some instances dropship. You've got multimodal e-commerce, right? It's all digital commerce, but it's multimodal. Right. And anytime you're trying to build a multimodal commerce platform, you start getting into serious areas of complexity.
For sure.
Because when you're trying to combine and you're trying to effectively obfuscate all of those different modes of e-commerce and hide all that complexity away from the consumer, and you're saying, okay, we want to weave this journey together. We want to blend seamlessly content and commerce so that it doesn't seem like a selling site. It seems like an educational and an entertainment site. Then we've added on these seamless commerce features over the top of the community experience. That's a really difficult balance to strike, to where you don't come across as this hardcore selling engine. You come across as this hardcore community engine that then has these subtle e-commerce layers on top of that. That's really difficult of a balance to strike, isn't it?
It definitely is. Yeah. It's a testament to the development team and like the vision of the company and all that stuff. But yeah, there's been some gigantic headaches along the way. It's been incredibly difficult, but trying to keep in mind, like what you just said, of, we're trying to apply context to the sales cycle, really. So it's really difficult to get into hunting because there's this giant mountain of gear in front of you that, should I buy this should I go cheap on this product, or am I going to depend on that in the field? Do I need to know if that's really going to work? And you can read reviews. Customers are smart these days. They know that a lot of those are astroturfed and they're not real 5-star reviews. And it's not always as easy to find the right piece of gear. And we feel like that if we can create a community where people are just it's fun to share. That's another thing about hunters and anglers, is we're proud of the gear we have. And so we want to share it. We want to tell other people like, hey, this is what we're using and stuff. So creating that allows more context around these products. And the final step to tying all that together is when you go to a product page on GoWild, you actually see all of the posts that someone has tagged that particular gear item in, and all the setups that someone has added that piece of gear to. So it functions as, hey, where are the holes in my setup? If you're looking for this particular, let's say, jacket, you can see what pants they paired with that jacket. And, they're using these archery tools as well. Maybe this is something I need too. So it's like an added layer of a recommendation engine there. But yeah, it's been a serious challenge to try to make it all feel natural. Just building a place that people want to hang out in is not as easy as people might think. There's all these other options that people can go spend their times in all these different places, and we're obviously competing with them. So having a place that people want to come back to and building a community where people have connections and want to see what other people are sharing and things like that, just in itself is a challenge. And then adding the e-commerce element to that was its own challenge, but it's been one that we've been working through for years and really feel like has gotten to a really cool place and ready to expand on it now. It's been a really cool thing for me early in my career to be around such smart people figuring all this stuff out. I consider myself super lucky to be a part of this and doing something new and different, and it's been a lot of fun.
And I guess to a degree, the social media platforms have done you guys some pretty big favors in the sense that they have really strict restrictions on things like showing hunted animals, for example, being able to show even somebody as big as Cam Hanes or Joe Rogan or Goggins. These guys, they have to be really careful about the images and the videos that they put on something like an Instagram or a Facebook or whatever, because you can't show. There's really difficult restrictions around. You can show hunting, but you can't show an animal dying. And there's just really strong restrictions on what you can and cannot show. And there's oftentimes some big gray areas here, because Cam's been able to put up some images that I thought, oh man, he's going to get kicked off of Instagram if he shows this image. And so what it seems Instagram has done to him in many instances is just shadow ban him instead, to where his reach is just fallen off a cliff. But he's just so big now. Someone like Cam Hanes is so big now, and his son is so big now on social, that people will go and seek out his content regardless of whether he's shadow banned or not. But the whole point of me bringing this up is that I guess what you guys have tried to do is to create a all outdoor pursuit friendly platform, whether you're a hunter, whether you're a fisher, whether you're a tramper, a hiker, a rock climber. It doesn't really matter what you're into in the outdoors. You guys have tried to cater for those sub niches of the greater outdoor community, and then layer on that functionality that would make it easier for people to join those communities and start taking on those pursuits.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that was definitely a big catalyst in the adoption rate for sure of the platform. Is like, hey, we're having a hard time on these other platforms sharing our lifestyle. And in a lot of ways, Instagram and Facebook are in a tough situation where they're like, hey, 99.9% of people don't hunt. Like, how do we keep all of them happy and keep the hunters happy who Mark Zuckerberg hunts? He knows this stuff, right? So it's not like he hates hunters. I think that's a misconception. He's just in between a rock and a hard place of, okay, I have to keep the majority of the people on my platform happy. And so for us, we're like, okay, cool. Y'all come over here. Like we have a place where everyone's starting from the first or from the same page. Like everyone has this understanding of conservation and the hunting lifestyle and how all that plays into a bigger role into our ecosystem. It's not about like blood and killing things. It's starting from a different place. And we actually allow for content curation that you manage on your site. So like in the onboarding to the platform, we ask people what they're interested in. And if you just select like fishing and hiking, you're not going to see bloody animals. We're able to keep that out of the experience if that's what you want. And just giving more control to the content curation has been really helpful to that. I would say most people that come to the platform have some interest in hunting. We know that 70% of people that hunt fish. So there's just a giant overlap in those communities. And we've definitely focused on those main areas for sure early on in our growth. But yeah, that was for sure a catalyst in GoWild. Like getting adopted was just the censorship that was required for those massive platforms that can't really accommodate those two things. Like those two thoughts don't really fit in a lot of people's heads of the whole dead animal thing. They're disconnected from where their food comes from in a lot of circles. Yeah.
It makes complete sense. And you guys over at Go building effectively your platform for over 6 years. So this is not just a flash in the pan, so to speak.
No.
This has been built over a long period of time, sustained effort. I know how expensive and difficult software development is. I've been involved in it my whole career. How many developers do you have? Are they all in-house? Do you work with offshore teams? Do you outsource any of this work? Do you work with an agency? Give us a little bit of the lay of the land, because obviously you're competing with the likes of REI, you're competing with the likes of Amazon, but in some respects maybe not, because you've got also affiliate relationships and distributor relationships with some of these vendors and providers as well. So it feels, whilst in some respects you're a competitor of some of these guys, in some respects you're actually not, because you're a distribution channel for a lot of these major players as well. So there must be some uneasy tension there to a degree, especially as you transition from being a pure affiliate to being now, okay, we're actually gonna now be a direct seller as well. So maybe you could talk us through the tech team that helped bring this to life and spotlight them, but also how the business model changed over time and how you managed the friction that naturally occurs when you transition your commerce model.
Yeah, for sure. The development team has waxed and waned over the years, right? I think we're at 3 full-time developers, which the founders and stuff talk to giant companies all the time, and they're like, how big is your development team? Probably around 20 people or so, right? And we're like, nope, we just have a very small team of incredibly high quality, very talented and multifaceted developers. At times we've had a dedicated web developer. At times we've had a dedicated Android developer getting off the ground. There's been several folks come and go. We've worked with agencies in some capacities for specifically Android development. That's a super challenging platform to develop for. And we've had in-house Android developers and stuff. But right now we have Chris Gleim, who's our chief dev officer. He oversees everything, and he is particularly in control of our iOS development. That's his expertise. And then we have a infrastructure senior dev who manages like our back end, and he's pretty full stack, but he's very focused on back end primarily. And with some of the integrations we were talking about before, like he's got a very full plate. We've had multiple back end developers at times, but right now we're just at the one. And then we have a guy so he worked with us for a long time as a senior web dev for a while, and then actually went to go work for another startup and then came back because he liked it so much. He's back to us. He worked at another company for about 6 months, and now he came back to take over Android specifically, and is now working in like a hybrid Android and web role. And then we have actually our president is a data scientist as well. That's his training. And so he's, I don't know, is that considered a developer, I guess?
Nowadays, oftentimes you'll have to be a developer to be a data scientist.
So he does all of, like, obviously you can imagine we have mountains of data. And so making sense of all that and presenting it back to the team with actionable insights and stuff like that has been building dashboards and looking at how all the new features and development and stuff is impacting the engagement and sell through and all that stuff. Yeah, that's the nerds, as I call them. They're awesome. I'm super proud of them, and they've built something really cool. I think they're proud of themselves too. It's been a long journey, and we've watched a lot of other companies try to build outdoor social media apps. Like, it's not the concept of outdoor social media, like every hunter is, man, Facebook bans us and this sucks and these forums are terrible. We should build our own. And a lot of them that have the means, what they do is they go and they work with an agency and they build off of an out of the box platform. And it's just looks the same as all these other kind of niche social media apps. They're limited in functionality. Once they build it, they leave it. Whereas we're releasing new features and updates at least every other week for the past several years. And we've got quite a moat around what we got going on because we've been here for a while. It's custom. And yeah, so we've watched a lot of those other companies try to do the same thing and died for various reasons. And thankfully, we've been able to stick around and iterate it onto a point where, monetization and all that stuff is just inherently in the platform.
And that's a perfect segue to Holler. I think you guys have, I think this is an exciting, what I love about the Holler story is that you guys have eaten your own dog food, and you've been eating your own dog food for 6 years. You've been taking the lumps, you've been investing the money, you've been investing the time, the love, the energy, and at the end of the day, you've been building a platform you guys would actually want to use yourselves because you're outdoors people yourselves. So it's not like you're building for a customer cohort that you know nothing about, that you don't identify with, that you've got nothing in common with. You've been building for a community that you're actually a part of. So you've been building a platform that you would want to consume as a user, as well as turning it into a business. And you've been very effective because of that at turning it into a business and being able to monetize in a respectful, deeply integrated way that you've managed to strike that balance between content and commerce, which is so hard to do. And I think there's very few brands out there that have been able to do that successfully over the years. In fact, I would say that somebody like a Patagonia, for example, there's only a couple of brands, I think REI to a degree. There's a few brands out there that have been able to strike that balance between content and commerce, but there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of them. And it comes back to their mission. It comes back to why they came to be. It comes back to their why, to use a Simon Sinek term. But it feels like you guys have struck this really lovely balance between content and commerce that's so hard to achieve. It's like you say, it sounds easy. But why do 95% of the brands out there why are they not able to do it? Because they start out with the monetization concept first, and then they try to build a content engine around it. They try to build an experience around it. They try to build a community around it after the fact. So they start with, how can we sell more shit? And then they go, oh, damn, we need a community around our brand to be able to sell more shit. And that is a difficult place to start. When you start with the profit motive in mind first, as opposed to thinking, how can I serve the community first, and then the monetization will work itself out. And I've always thought that about my content, right? I've been making content for 6-7 years now. And I never in the beginning, because I never had a consultancy business in the beginning when I first started putting out content, there was no thought, oh, great, I can monetize this through my consulting business, for example, because I was never in the game of monetization because I was an employee at that stage. And I guess for you guys, the fact that you have very intentionally stayed away from, up until now, for 6 years, you've stayed away from monetizing the commerce engine under the bonnet of what you guys are doing and putting that out to third parties. And you've delayed that to the point now where you think, hey, we're now at a place of maturity where, okay, there's maybe platforms like Mighty Networks out there, there's Gumroad, there's a few other sort of platforms that play around the edges of the concept of content and commerce and community. but maybe they don't do all the things you do, and maybe they don't have the seamless integrations that you guys have. And I'm guessing that you guys looked at the market with, hey, we've built something really special here, and maybe another way we can monetize this is to commercialize the underlying platform tech and say, hey, we can turn this into a SaaS platform for other brands. And is that kind of how Holler came to be? And maybe you could talk about the name as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Really just turning around and being like, oh my gosh, look what everybody has built here. This is insane. The amount of manual work and insane like custom development and stuff like that. We're like, man, I feel like there's a lot of companies out there that would seriously benefit from having a system, being able to tap into a system like this. And so we started, it's probably about a year and a half ago was when we started, like when we transitioned from affiliate to actually this kind of like distributed, like multi-tenant e-commerce model that we've integrated. So we've actually allowed that to mature a little bit too before we rolled it out. But yeah, that was the nexus, like just turning around and saying, man, like the data, the system, the integrations, the customer support, like we figured it all out for ourselves. Like we started with a community and kind of were like, okay, so we got to monetize this to make it a business. Like it's cool having a community, but like, how do you make money at this in a way that's not gross and selling out and doing all that stuff? A lot of folks end up having to try to do like these massive communities and brands and stuff like that. They're desperate to find a way to make money. And sometimes you sign on with an advertising partner that maybe isn't perfect for your brand, and you got to do it to stay afloat and keep the community going. And there's like this acceptance. That's how it's got to be and how it is. But really, we feel like by working with brands to leverage our technology, we can offer them an additional way to monetize that's perfectly on brand and right in stream with what they're already doing a lot of times. Like most of these large communities and brands that are established are doing affiliate to some degree and are selling product naturally in their content. So they're doing content commerce, but they're getting the short end of the stick because what they're good at is community building and content creation. But what they're not awesome at, maybe all the time, or don't have the development or the team or the funds is to attach e-commerce to their business. Like that's a super difficult thing to do, as we've found. And by we build a system that kind of stands between GoWild and all of these other tenants that sell gear of various kinds. We're like, okay, if there's something standing in between us, like that same thing can stand between other brands and integrations and allow them to do the same thing. All we have to do is build a system that can parse out the customer support and the order tracking and the attribution and all that type of stuff. And a lot of that's done. So it's been really cool seeing like our first partnership is wrapping up now. And so we're going to get to roll this thing out. It's going to be really cool. But back to the thing about the naming of Holler Commerce, we're all big into wildlife and stuff like that, right? The coyote is an amazing animal. It's started off in like isolated parts of North America and has managed to infiltrate literally every city and major city and state in the country. You just can't get rid of them. Like wolves, they've been able to eradicate in a lot of places and limit their territory. Coyotes just always find a way. You can't take them down. And Holler came out of this concept of a logo design of this coyote and how they howl, like holler out to their people or to their pack. And it's also something that we say around the office. We're not a part of Silicon Valley. We're part of Silicon Holler. So that's a very like Kentucky, like Midwest kind of thing to say. It's actually hollow, but we say holler down in the holler, whatever. And so it's been a word that's just been around the office, something that we're all comfortable with and say all the time. And so a little bit of a middle finger to Silicon Valley. Like we've never really participated in that way of building startups and that ecosystem. We're doing our own thing over here. And investors have even told Brad he's trying to build a pineapple in Kentucky. You just can't build startups in Kentucky. You got to go to where the Boston, New York, Silicon Valley, like all these places. And obviously we admire a lot of those companies and investors and stuff, but it's just not been a part of our story. And so Holler came out of that. And so our logo is a coyote, and that's where all that originated from.
Love it. Love it. And you've even got the Holler Commerce website now, which is really cool. I think that only happened in the last month or so now.
And like a week and a half.
Yes, which is really cool. And the cool thing is you have quote unquote out of the box integrations from the looks of things to existing commerce platforms like the Shopify's, the WooCommerces, the BigCommerces, the EDI integrations, so that if a merchant is already using another commerce engine and another catalog engine, then they can integrate and bring those products into the Holler Commerce platform from that commerce engine, which access their catalog. They can also integrate orders back down from the Holler Commerce engine back down to those platforms for fulfillment and shipping updates and those types of things, at least from what I can tell. Now, again, I've never used your platform, and it's really just literally brand new to the world. But as I read it and as I understand the Holler Commerce promise, yes, you have created a social commerce platform, which really is built from the ground up for communities with that native integration of the commerce and the content piece. Do you see, is your vision for the platform that somebody would go away from using, say, the Shopify front end, they would implement Holler Commerce as their commerce front end because it's got the content piece, it's got the community piece, and it's got the commerce piece rolled into one. But they retain Shopify almost as their back end fulfillment, catalog management, all that sort of stuff, that they would do that through Shopify, but they wouldn't necessarily continue using the Shopify front end. They might use the Holler front end and content experience as their commerce engine.
Yeah, and so it's at an interesting phase or stage right now, right? Where we're at the very beginning of creating these integrations and doing all this stuff. And really at the beginning of what we're doing, it's all custom integrations, right? Because we've never done it we don't have a systemized way of working with all these different platforms. So I'm sure it'll be a case by case basis. And that's a bit of the agility that we're able to offer as a startup, right? So we move fast and are used to moving like that. But out of the gate, I think who we're going to be working with a lot are companies that don't have Shopify, don't have commerce built into their platform. They're doing affiliate, they're doing advertising deals, they're doing, like, they've got the community, they've got the content, but what they're struggling to do is further monetize, become a little bit more independent and diversified, offer another monetized stream or revenue stream. And I think that's where we're starting out primarily. We integrate product from Shopify, EDI, BigCom, like all those integrations are done, ready, and good to go. And we're doing all that EDI and those integrations quickly. We have a system for all that stuff. But as far as what it looks like as a media company or content company or community company, we're not necessarily looking to interface with a current fulfillment backend or anything like that. If you have that and you sell swag and you do a little bit, you're like, that's fine. That's not a part necessarily of what we're doing here. But just allowing those companies to tap into all of the products that we've built up and reviews and content and stuff like that around those products that you can tap into from day one without any integration or any manual work, without customer support, without fulfillment work, without managing returns and doing all that stuff. Like all that stuff is going through our back end as if it was just coming from GoWild. Like we have a system for how all that stuff works. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but we're in a custom development stage a little bit with who we're starting out with, and we're starting at large conglomerates and stuff like that have gigantic reach and tons of community and stuff like that. And the intention, as fast as we can, is to scale this down to the level where a smaller blog or community or whatever could say, hey, we want to monetize, and we can turn it on quick and be ready to roll. But out of the gate, we're working on custom development to do it for the first time for some of these big partners that we're onboarding right now.
And are you almost like a 4PL in the sense that you guys, your team, your current customer service team would actually provide the customer service for those brands that take on the platform? So you're not just a tech company, you're also a services company at the same time. So is that the vision for the business, that you guys will always be a platform and a services business rolled into one, as opposed to, hey, here's the tech, go crazy with it?
For sure. And actually, that's where like AI comes into our story. Like our developers are on the leading edge of AI doing some insane stuff. And we've already integrated that into GoWild in some really cool ways. And so, yes, service is definitely going to be a big part of like software services and management and all that type of stuff. Is definitely going to be a big part of what Holler is. And to truly be turnkey, I feel like you have to in this situation. Like we would be throwing these folks to the wolves. It is it's a very challenging landscape to navigate on your own. And we've done it before and can scale up what we're doing to accommodate these different customer support and fulfillment and all that stuff like that. We're ready to scale that up and apply that to other companies so that they don't have to do it themselves. And then once they've integrated, we're now talking to them about how do we optimize your setup here with these different AI tools and other services that we're offering to not just integrate the products to their content, but also like how do we make it better and how do we improve sell-through and work on conversion rate optimization and stuff like that. Yeah, it's been a really one of the cool AI tools that is in the works for Holler, but is already being implemented into GoWild, is this insane search engine that is basically like a God search that can pull up, if you type in a question about turkey hunting in the rain, for example, like how do I turkey hunt in the rain? Here's an article about turkey hunting in the rain. Here's a video about turkey hunting in the rain. Here's some general advice about turkey hunting in the rain based on the content generated in the community. And then here's products you'd need to turkey hunt in the rain. So being able to digest all of what the content and community and all that stuff that exists and spit out like an effective answer back to the person and give them that ultimate answer to their questions is something that we're going to be offering as an AI tool to our Holler clients as well. So we'll digest all of your information and allow that to be searchable along with the products that you add to your store. And that's just one of the things that we've been working on, and a pretty cool service that I think we're going to continue to build on to things like that as the AI wave continues to roll. So it's been pretty
nice. Cool. Large language models, I think. And are you using ChatGPT as the underlying platform tech that's integrated in with your system, or are you using some open source AI large language model tech instead?
Yeah, ultimately. Yeah, there's like multiple software components involved, but yeah, ChatGPT is, or GPT-4 and all that stuff. And I'm not a developer, as you can tell. I couldn't even talk you through. My buddy develops it and he's like, check this out. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It'd be awesome if you could also do this. And he's like, okay, cool. I'll work on that. I'm not in the trenches of development by any means. So I'm not even going to pretend like I know how all of it works, but it's been pretty cool to watch them develop it all and make it all work.
And I guess the beauty of the large language model is the fact that it relies on a very large corpus of data to work well and to be able to have access to unique data sets. And that's the differentiating factor for you guys. You've got a very large, you've got a 6-year-old data set here that is deep, it's broad, it's rich. It uses natural language anyway, because the conversations happening on GoWild are in natural language. And so really in terms of feeding it data that's super relevant to be able to get a human-like result, it feels like it's a great match between large language models and your existing data set to create a pretty perfect customer experience on the front end.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool to see like how the community user-generated content has played into the AI thing. Like I think a lot of companies are building directly off of the back of ChatGPT, right? And like you can tweak some things with prompts, but unless you're inserting your own data into the equation, like ultimately other people can find a way to get it to produce a similar result. But when you're introducing your own data that you've generated, that's a way to differentiate your tech and what you're building and stuff. So it's a cool thing that I think as we get started and we stay adjacent to the outdoor industry, like early on with our new partners, they're going to be able to tap into the data that we've used or that we've gained from the community. And then over time, slowly introducing things that are just a little bit different shade, and ultimately getting to where we're all around different industries, but consuming all that content and being able to build a smart search that no one's seen before. It's going to be pretty impressive stuff. And all that's going on at the same time as we're building this new software company and service company. It's a pretty exciting and busy time around old GoWild / Holler, whatever we are at this point. We're two companies.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. It's super exciting. And let's say you start working with the brand, and I know this is still very early days, so you may not even know the answer to this, but let's say they already run a bulletin board. What some of these large brands that you're talking about, they already have communities. They might already have a forum. They might have a bulletin board. They might have a CMS platform that allows for heavy user-generated content and reviews and testimonials and gear reviews and at the product level as well as at the company level. So is it your vision that ultimately you would integrate with whatever platform they already have, suck all that data, suck all that content into the Holler platform so that they're, instead of starting from 0, they're starting from out of 100, maybe they're starting from 25 or they're starting from 50, right? As opposed to starting completely from scratch. Is it your vision that you would bring whatever content engine they currently use, whatever community engine they currently use, you would suck all that in, basically map it to the Holler platform model, data model, and then they start from a really good place?
Yeah, eventually. I think out of the gate, we're very focused on just like the shop element of, hey, you're making a low percentage on affiliate sales and you can't control what happens once they leave your website and go to another website and maybe the product's out of stock. You don't get to collect customer data or any of that stuff. Okay, hey, you're already used to inserting links and doing all this stuff on your website. Let us add an e-commerce shop side of your business, and the same products you're selling on affiliate, you can sell yourself, collect the customer data, and we all know what you can do with that to help grow a business, right? A lot of these affiliate and big media companies or whatever that are used to doing that, they're doing giveaways and they're doing all kinds of list trading and all kinds of stuff like that just to have some semblance of a list. But imagine if you could collect all the sales that right now you currently drive for your affiliates and you're helping build their business, like, and they're collecting all that customer data. If you could do that for yourself and help yourself scale that way, make a bigger piece of the pie, that kind of thing. So we're very focused on the shop side first. That's where we feel is like the product is the most mature. And then at the same time, building all these services underneath to help like further optimize, like what we were just talking about there. We're pulling in that content, offering up smart search and doing that kind of thing where we integrate smart search into the products you've pulled in from our catalog. But yeah, I think there will be several other services that we offer along with that. I just offered that one. That's the most mature one that we've built for sure. But there's others in the works too.
Love it. And you guys have effectively taken the Amazon model, right? So Amazon famously has taken a cost center in the business with all their infrastructure for Amazon.com, and they have spun that out. And effectively now they offer it as AWS, and they offer obviously third-party services and all sorts of other things. Basically, Amazon takes almost every single cost center in their business, including their AI engine, including all sorts of technology, and eventually they commercialize and monetize that, and they effectively turn what was a cost center into a profit center instead by allowing other companies to leverage their technology, including their just walk out technology in physical stores, all that stuff. They're very clever at monetizing by turning cost centers into profit centers. And it feels like you guys have followed that same model, and that seems like it would be very attractive to investors. So are you guys bootstrapped effectively? Do you have investors? Are you looking to go public at some stage? And obviously there's some commercial considerations here that you might not be able to talk about, but as a business, have you always been bootstrapped since the beginning with the 4 founders, or have you taken on investment? Do you have investors? Is that something that is on the radar of the business? Like you say, you're not in Silicon Valley, you're in the Midwest of the United States, and so you're doing things a little bit differently. So I assume that you've done things differently from a funding perspective as well than following the traditional, let's build an MVP, let's go and do a seed round and build our business off the back of investor and VC money.
Yeah. And honestly, so I'm not a founder and I'm not a part of any of the investment conversations or anything like that. So I really have no idea what I'm allowed to say other than we're not bootstrapped, right? So we have raised investment dollars, and other than that, I'd be a little worried about what I'm allowed to say and not say, because I don't know. But I would say for sure we've done things differently than how things go in Silicon Valley, right? Like the typical Silicon Valley story is build MVP, working with 1 or 2 investment firms that throw in a ton of cash, and that's how it works. That's definitely not been our journey. And IPO, all that stuff, man, that's so far out of our heads. I think we're all still so much in build mode and focusing on making something that would be worthy of that someday, that and again, especially not as a founder, like I try to stay in my lane and do my thing and just work hard to build cool stuff and grow it. I don't know would be the best answer to most of that question.
Love it, mate. Love it. Now, if people want to learn more about Holler, I wouldn't typically ask you at this stage, what's on your roadmap for the next 6, 12, 18 months in terms of functionality, but you've already covered that, which is great, which is that, hey, look, we're building as we go, and we're trying to find product market fit for our platform based on effectively the engagements that we have with these foundational clients that we have of our platform, and we're going to adapt and we're going to adjust. And then eventually we may have to have a fully fleshed out commerce platform that people can just go in, sign up, and those small and medium-sized brands would be able to use the platform once you get to that point, but you're not quite there yet. People want to learn more. If people think that this might be something that they're interested in, that they may want to at least have an initial conversation with you guys, are they best to just go to hollercommerce.com? Is that the best place to go? Or would you prefer that they reach out to you on LinkedIn? Or what's the best way to get a hold of you guys if a brand out there thinks that they may want to be a little bit of a beta test customer for the Holler platform?
Yeah, for sure. I think both of those options. Hollercommerce.com, we actually do have a sign-up form there. Email goes straight to our CEO, Brad Luttrell. And if you prefer LinkedIn or anything like that, myself, Brayden Ware, and then Brad Luttrell. And yeah, those two probably are. We're very active on LinkedIn and pay close attention to our inboxes there. And some of the folks that have reached out for Holler have done that through LinkedIn already. That's no problem if you'd rather do that, but those are the 2 best ways.
Absolutely love it. Now we're at the point of our conversation where I get to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you. And I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. Can be personal, can be professional, whatever you like. So I would love to turn the microphone over to you, Brayden Ware of both Holler Commerce and GoWild. What's your question for me today?
Okay, so you mentioned twice in our conversation, maybe 3 times, the word tramping. What is tramping?
Great point. That's a hangover from my nearly 30 years in New Zealand. The word hiking doesn't exist in New Zealand. It
Oh,
is
it's
so
hiking.
so New Zealand and Australia, New Zealanders and Australians call hiking tramping. So when you get out into the outdoors, if you're hiking, you're tramping. And
Okay.
so I know to Americans, a tramp is like somebody that lives under a bridge. And
Yes.
so you're thinking, is that an outdoor thing in New Zealand, like where people choose to live under bridges and they're tramps by choice? So that's where that term comes from. And I had to get used to that term when I first moved to New Zealand, because when I first moved to New Zealand, it's a beautiful country from an outdoors and hiking and fishing and hunting perspective. But it's quite different to the States in that you can pretty much hunt a lot of animals you can actually hunt year round, as opposed to having these really tightly defined seasons in the United States for kind of almost every single animal in the United States. Is very tightly restricted in each individual state, and sometimes each county has its own rules on what you can do and when. But in New Zealand, it's not quite like that. It's quite a bit more open in that regard. There's certain rules, but it's a lot less restrictive than the United States. And when I first moved there, I got heavily into the tramping community. One of my first friends that I ever made in New Zealand was actually a German that was studying in New Zealand at the time. He was getting his master's degree. And so a lot of Germans are seriously into travel in the outdoors, and he was seriously into travel in the outdoors. And then I got into rock climbing in New Zealand, into a rock climbing community, and started rock climbing there. And just the outdoors community in New Zealand it's considered one of the world's biggest destinations for outdoor sports, for sure, and even adventure sports, from river rafting and bungee jumping. And just from an outdoors perspective, it's a pretty big destination for that. Yeah, that's where the term tramping originates for me. And I have almost expunged the term hiking from my mind, just because I spent so many years there. Tramping just became part of my vocabulary.
Yeah, no, that's a fun one. I'm going to work that into my vocabulary and throw it out to my buddies, and you'll be like, what are you talking about? I'll get to tell them about this.
Exactly. Listen, mate, look, it has been fantastic chatting with you. I love the GoWild story. I love the Holler Commerce story. I followed Brad. I think I've been connected with Brad on LinkedIn for maybe 2 or 3 years now, and followed his journey. And he's very vocal, and he's been a big advocate. I think as much as Joe Rogan and Cam Hanes and all these guys have been advocates for respectful hunting and respectful management of outdoor spaces and respectful management of animal resources and all those things, I think Brad has been equally important in the community, advocating for the community, promoting ethical hunting, and helping people understand, look, unless you're a vegan, you're eating meat anyway. And 9 times out of 10, you actually don't know where that meat comes from. You don't know the life that animal has had. Whereas we as hunters, we do know. We do care. Not all, there's assholes, I guess, in every sport or in every pursuit or hobby.
For sure.
But for the most part, almost every hunter I have met in my life knows a hell of a lot more about ecology, knows a hell of a lot more about sustainability than your average man or woman in the street do. And they actually care about it a hell of a lot more than the average person in the street does.
Yep.
They have tremendous respect for the animals that they hunt. They have tremendous respect for providing for their family and their community, especially with inflation biting and cost of living going up. And Cam Hanes, for example, he's consistently showing, hey, when I hunt, these are the 15 families that I was able to help and give meat to that couldn't afford it. And so these are the types of things I think that are so important about community. Yep. And why I think, regardless of whether you're part of the outdoors community or you're part of the knitting community, I don't really think it matters what community you're a part of. I think it's having a sense of camaraderie. I think it's having a sense that we're all in this together, that we have common interests, we have common goals, we have a common view of the world. And I think that's super important for humanity, full stop. I think with all the division that seems to encompass the world, I think finding your community, I think finding your tribe is actually now more important than ever before. And it feels like what you guys are building is aimed fairly and squarely at exactly that, in helping tribes find each other and coalesce around a common interest, but also being able to make that a sustainable community through commerce as well. So it feels really interesting what you guys are building, and congratulations on getting as far as you have. And I just cannot wait to see what you guys do next. So thank you so much for sharing the Holler story and the GoWild story with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, what a great way to put it. That was awesome. I really appreciate it too. This was a really cool experience for me. This is the first podcast I've done outside of talking about hunting and fishing and stuff. A lot of fun. And I really appreciate you giving me a chance to come on and talk about it and hang out with you for a bit. It was awesome.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.